Namaste everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome all to our fifth session on how to study the Bhagavad Gita. Just to recap for our audience, we in the earlier sessions we started with giving a snapshot of how to study the Gita. Then we have covered chapter 1, that is the Arjuna Vishad Yoga. The last two sessions we covered the chapter 2, that is Sankhya Yoga. We divided it into two parts. The first part was Sankhya, the second part was Buddhi Yoga. And today we are going to discuss a third part of the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga, which is Sthita-Prajna. So to begin with, Nilesh, let me ask you one question, which always kind of I think about, as to what is the origin of this word Sthita-Prajna. Because it says, it starts with Arjuna Uvacha, Sthita-Prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava, Sthitadi kim prabhasheta kimasita vajreta kim. So Arjuna Uvacha. So was Arjun the originator of this word? Or was it found in our earlier scriptures before Mahabharata? So can you please let us know about this?
Right. Namaskar, everyone. So the word Sthita-Prajna is very much unique to Bhagavad Gita. It is a contribution of Bhagavad Gita to the entire ancient Indian narratives. Naturally, the word will come after Bhagavad Gita, but before that, you do not see the word Sthita-Prajna. Couple of other words, one that you will see other places, and it's not explicitly stated in Bhagavad Gita, but the word that Bhagavad Gita intends to say, and we will see that through chapter 3, 4, 5, or at the end of the fifth chapter, is word Jivan Mukti. So that's not a word of Bhagavad Gita, but that's kind of closer where Bhagavad Gita is alluding to when it says Sthita-Prajna. And another word, I do not know if it is original to Bhagavad Gita, is Brahma Nirvana. I don't know for sure, but Brahma Nirvana you will see at the end of this chapter, and it gets repeated again in the fifth chapter. And it's for a reason, because there is a connection with the second chapter and a fifth chapter, and again 18th chapter. Okay. Yeah. Back to you.
Yeah. Aisha Brahmi Sthiti Partha, Brahma Nirvana.
Yes.
Yeah. So, to take this further, I want to know your understanding of word Sthita-Prajna at various points. Tasya Prajna Pratishtata. There are 3 or 4 shlokas, where Krishna explains, if this happens, the Prajna becomes sthira, the Buddhi becomes sthira. So it's like Iha Sarvatrana Bhisnehas, or Kurmo Gnani va Sarvashaha. As a kasa, as a tortoise, withdraws his indriya. So at such times, the Tasya Prajna Pratishtata. So can you elaborate on your understanding of this word Sthita-Prajna and in the context of the Buddhi becoming sthira?
Okay. So Krishna, so Arjun has asked that question, his confusion, his Vishada. That's the chapter 1 and a portion of it in chapter 2. Krishna starts responding to it, and we looked at Sankhya Buddhi and then Yoga Buddhi. Think of Sankhya Buddhi, and Vasudev says it in the Mahabharata, that all the knowledge that we have, so this is like Vasudev saying 7,500 years ago. He says all the knowledge, and that's true even today, but I'm just saying the context of when Vasudev said it, all the knowledge that Vasudev says in Mahabharata that we have today, meaning at that time, is due to Sankhya. So what is Sankhya? Sankhya is Vijnana. Okay, Sankhya is that scientific method that we talk about, which is like literally observing the universe, observing everything around you, but everything that is inside you. That's why that contemplation, meditation, and interacting with nature. And so that is a philosophy. You can say that is a scientific buddhi, Vijnana Buddhi, Sankhya Buddhi. And then Yoga Buddhi that we looked at is the application of it. And now the third stage is so Sankhya Buddhi, think of that as a philosophy. Yoga Buddhi is like the application of that philosophy. And now Sthita-Prajna is the individual, who makes use of these two, because Sankhya Buddhi, a philosophy just sitting on the desk, is not going to do anything. And unless there is an individual involved in it, there is no point in calling it a Yoga Buddhi, which is the application of a Sankhya. You can almost think of that as a Yoga Buddhi. The person who is expert, who is skilled in the use of both Sankhya Buddhi and Yoga Buddhi, is a Sthita-Prajna. That is kind of a definition of Sthita-Prajna. Now, from Ashwini, from the shloka point of view, 52nd chapter, second adhyay, 54 through 72 are the shloka related to Sthita-Prajna.
Yeah, you're
Go
right.
ahead. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Right. And then they are separated. So I'll give you a high level summary and then we can go into the details, a little bit details, not too detailed. Now, out of those 54 through 72, if you think in terms of, say, just starting shlok, like after 54, like where Arjun is asking the question. And in response, when Krishna is verse 55, he's giving the definition of what Sthita-Prajna is. And then if you look through, say, like 56 through 58, those are definition of Sthita-Prajna. Then 56 to 58 are the characteristics of Sthita-Prajna. And then 59 through 68, and we can split those also if we have a time, is like how to become a Sthita-Prajna. So Krishna's advice, of course, specifically to Arjun, but you can realize Arjun doesn't have Arjun is a Sthita-Prajna. He just has forgotten, so to say. So there is no time for Arjun to go through this practice. Only he can understand. But for us, our benefit, and that's why Vyasadeva is writing it in Bhagavad Gita. I mean, writing it as a part of Mahabharata. How to become a Sthita-Prajna, that's actually 59 through 68, like the significant portion of it. Then the last two verses, or rather 2-3 verses, 69 through 71, is a description of how Sthita-Prajna acts. Okay, his daily life and his nature of his actions and nature of his behavior. And then last verse is essentially, you can say, summarizing the final outcome, like, the Brahmi Sthiti or Brahma Nirvana. That's just a high-level summary of Sthita-Prajna portion of Adhyay 2. Back to you.
Yeah, I got it. Actually, what you're trying to say is, you can correct me, that it is a state of mind. A Sthita-Prajnata is a state of mind which we need to achieve with practice. How to achieve is what Krishna is teaching us. Like, for example, one of the tools he is saying is Niraharasya Dehinaha. The water fasting that we do. So that is one of the tool which might help us, or which will help us to reach that state where, we are kind of going towards asanga, or we are trying to get detachment, or, the attachment to food is going down, or the cravings are going down. So these are the, because it's ultimately the prakriti, right? It is a sharir dharma. But the more we get detached, the more, the better is our state of Sthita-Prajnata. Is that what it means? Or is that one of the tool to achieve this state, is what you're...
That is correct. So, for example, Niraharasya Dehina, that verse is what? Shlok number 59? Yeah.
59, yeah.
Yeah. So that comes into the part of how to become a Sthita-Prajna. Now, just because you mentioned Niraharasya Dehina, Nirahara. So, for example, like, can you state that verse, the Niraharasya Dehina?
So, Vishaya Vinivartante, Niraharasya Dehinaha, Rasavarjam Rasopasya Param Trashtva Nivartate.
Right. So now here Nirahara is said that, if you what do you say, stay away from the consumption of a Vishaya, okay, all Vishayas, in Vishaya of a Indriya, then the I mean, you can avoid it, like what you need to avoid, but the taste for it may remain, right? And that will just go with only Atma Darshan. So you ask, like, is it at the mind level? Well, it is actually, if you look at that, it is at the all level, So we just say Mano, Vak, and kaya. So nirahara, just if you take it literally or even figuratively, literally in the sense ahara, in that sense like a food and not taking a food, but you can take it broadly in the sense of food for any indriya, not just the tongue, not just the mouth. And when you stop it, that is at the kaya level, at the level of a sharira. But then you also have, I mean, Krishna gives it into the next verses like 60, 61 and so on, how to work with the mind, and mind also gets bigger. So mano, ahankara, buddhi. So I'll say like a mind stuff, and then also the buddhi stuff, like how to do that. So nirahar, when Krishna is saying that, hey, that will only take care of this, but it will not take away the taste. Actually, Krishna is not taking away, not that you said it, Krishna, but some people actually misinterpret that. Oh, so, well, therefore, what is the point of a nirahar? Like, why artificially protect? No, artificially don't do anything anyways. But when you stop, the importance of nirahara is understood, only is Krishna is pointing out its limitation. So something that is done only at the kaya level, only at the sharir level. So for example, even that applies to anything, yama, niyama and all, even the puja vidhi that is been done. And there are shlok therefore in Bhagavad Puran, like which is dedicated to bhakti. He says, you may be just doing a puja, like literally a puja vidhi, like a ritual in the mandir every day. And you might do this for many lifetimes, and still you will not get mukti if your mana and buddhi are not engaged in the same act. So in that fashion, he's showing the limitation of a nirahara. He's saying that itself, that alone is not sufficient, but that's not the question you asked. Back to you, that yes, that nirahar, or the next verse, like it will talk about what? The Bhagavad Ashray, right? Finally, I mean, when that doesn't work, how will the Atma Darshan will occur? It is through surrender to the Bhagwan. Now, sometimes, you hear this word surrender. It's like literally falling flat. No, that's not what it means. It's like showing the viveka, showing the dhairya when the tough challenges come to you, or when you struggle. Like, for example, you and me are going through a water fast, right? For example, now after a while, it feels that our experiences are very different. And in comparison to, let us say, when we began together few weeks ago. So that therefore you need a viveka and a dhairya to see the other side of it. And that having that knowledge, the philosophical understanding, think of that Sankhya Buddhi and Yoga Buddhi. So why we are fasting? What are the outcomes? What are the symptoms, lakshana? What are the lakshanas to see when you actually fast? Why do they occur? Is this something we should worry, or is this something we should feel good about, like the symptoms? That helps. That is how Krishna is explaining how to become Sthita-Prajna, that's why he's saying, so when you try to do the nirahara, you are going to get some compulsions. You will feel like, my God, when am I going to break my fast, and when am I going to eat something like this? That will happen, but you have to control this with a vivek and a dhira, that dhira that he's referring to. And you also take help of that bhakti. That is basically now what I just said as in way of responding to what you said about nirahar, is how to become Sthita-Prajna. Back to you.
Correct. So what I like to add to what you're saying, what I understood is at least begin there. Yes, it is at a sharir or a kaya level, the nirahar practice of practicing nirahar days, like the upas days or the fasting days. So this kind of gaining strength in your mind, the buddhi also becomes strong. We get dhairya also by trying to practice the nirahar avastha. And it's a basic step, the first step towards trying to overcome these desires, the very first desire being food for any human being. At least if you are able to overcome that for some time in a week, say 48 hours in a 1 week, at least you're able to overcome that desire, then yes, then we move towards that sayyam. He everywhere it is sayyam, tani sarvani sayyam yukta asita matparah. So that sayyam starts, we start practicing the sayyam also by starting the fast, or these kind of things, or abstinence, because we have forgotten to abstain. as human beings, we have forgotten to abstain ourselves from anything.
Yeah.
Then after abstaining from food, maybe we can try to abstain from temper,
Yeah.
dhyato vishaya punsa sangasteshu pajayate. So sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodha vijayate. Krodhat bhavati sukrodha sammoha kama. So at least start from abstaining from food, which is probably easier, and then go to krodha, kama, moha, and moda, and all that. So maybe he's trying to give us various steps, into reaching that level. And of course, it may take years of practice. And you said, just doing puja or doing tarpan every day we may not achieve by doing that. But abstinence is the key. But what I understood is abstinence is a key to a key tool to achieving that state, and it needs to be practiced day in and day out, not just once, or not just once in a year, or not just once in a month, but we need to be at it all the time.
Yeah, and so abstinence needs to be filled with something, right? So when you retract yourself from something, you also fill it with something else, right? So for example, nira ahar, right? So nira ahar, which means what? But the body's mechanism, instead of production of energy to sustain the body continues. What body does, I mean, I'm talking purely the fast, for example. What body is doing is now body is using something else as a source of energy, the energy that is required for the body, right? Something similar will happen. So that kama, krodha that you talked about. So first, that 59 through 61 verses, think of this as for a body. And so body specifically like a nira ahara. Then the second thing you're talking is like taking help from other sources. First, using your own energy, own willingness, that is the viveka and dhairya, viveka and dhiratva. And then when you find, think of, again, I'm just because we are doing it, I'll pull the fast as experience. When we start at a certain evening, the last meal of the previous day, and the next day until like say noon, we don't feel anything because it's like another typical day until the lunchtime, let's say. And then when we miss the lunch, initially, at least for those people who may start it, they may start feeling it. That is when the vivek and dhairya is required. And then the 24 hours comes together and he says, oh my God, I'm not feeling very well. I mean, especially for new folks. And why is that happening? That's why we need to know the definition of what the fast is and what it does, the characteristics of or what happens during the fast. Same thing for a Sthita-Prajna. And then we pray. I mean, almost like say, okay, I know I'm going to do it. Yes, I can do it. Give me the strength. Bhagwan, give me the strength if that's required. That's mat-parayana bhakti. Similarly, when you talk about kama, krodha, and how that chain continues, those are verses 62 through 68. That is now working on your mind and a buddhi, right? So from a sharir, now working on a mind and a buddhi. Now, in order to do this, let's go a little bit back to, again, that 54 beginning of the verses. So the 55, which is the definition of a Sthita-Prajna, is what? If you have to summarize it, kamana tyaga and atma tushti. So do the kamana tyag and then you get atma tushti. What will happen? Okay. Not how, what will happen. So kamana tyag, think of that as a purva yoga, which is an action, that is that nira ahara, kamana tyag, like a desire to eat, but I choose not to. That's kamana tyag. Now, the person who is not used to this, suddenly you say, oh, actually there is a joy in abstinence, right? Like, would you relate to that? For example, like think of a fasting as an experience.
Very much.
Right? The joy of not eating. Now, if you say this to people will laugh at it. What do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I'm so happy. Oh, thank God I don't have to eat today.
Correct. And even that feeling, I mean, of course, I have experimented with fast for many years in different fashion, but like this round, I would say, last two instances, I got the feeling, even not at the time the next day, but even the day before, I'm saying, oh, tomorrow is my fast. How nice. I don't have to eat in the morning. And if you say this to others, or if somebody would have even said it to me or you before we have experienced it, we would have hardly believed that. What do you mean? The joy of not eating, or you don't have to eat, and that's a joyful activity, or rather a joyful inactivity. Think of it, right? Because
Yes.
you don't have to do it. Therefore, the definition is important. So kamana tyag is what you are doing. And why are you doing it? That is a purva yoga. Think of that. The uttara yoga, the outcome when you do that is you are going to get atma tushti. Okay, that is to be something to be experienced. You cannot teach it theoretically, and that is precisely the reason why now somebody has to actually practice it. You said we have to practice it. And just quickly, I'll mention something else. Characteristics of a Sthita-Prajna. Now think of this as equivalent. Again, I'll come back to the water fast as a metaphor. I'm simply using this as an intuition engine, as a metaphor. Think of the characteristic of a Sthita-Prajna. Knowing them is like reading a book, or reading a very good book, or reading very good multiple books on water fasting, for example. So it tells you, why do you fast? What exactly happens? What happens after 8 hours? What happens after 16 hours? What happens after 24 hours and 36 and 48 and 72? Why one should not go for like a 10 days plus without a medical supervision and stuff like that, you know. So the characteristics of Sthita-Prajna are given. I will not go into the details. I would encourage again people to read it. Again, as Ashwini, our objective is not to spoon feed this stuff, but just discuss some of what we have gone through or that we discuss and give some guidelines. So characteristics of Sthita-Prajna are what? From say 56, 58. So avoiding sukha dukkha, they're always going to be there. We cannot avoid them. We hear in the corporate world also, like, hey, or even general, like self-help books, they will say, you cannot avoid what others will say to you, but you always have in your control how you respond to them. So same thing in terms of, think of a sukha dukkha, the pleasant things and unpleasant things happen to you. Okay. Now avoiding vritti sarupya, number 56 shlok, if you look at it, you know, so that is how you respond to it is our sadhana. And that's very simple. Don't get too excited, okay, and jubilant when some favorable activity, what you consider favorable activity happens, and don't go into a depression and suddenly think this is the end of the world when a undesirable, like a dukkha type of activity happens. So that's like a one characteristic of a Sthita-Prajna is given. Not that we have achieved it, but now we know, hey, this is how it should feel like. Does that happen in my life? Then I am getting towards that Sthita-Prajna state. Then anasakta, like asakti. Now asakti is of a many kind. You know, asakti of our near, what you can say, swajana asakti. Like that is what Arjuna began, right? Arjuna's confusion is because of a swajana asakti. Aze mame tase kake sasare soyere seke guru bandhu mule natu. How do I kill all of this? That is like 1.37 verse. Or deha asakti. And therefore, Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaryam yavanam jara. Then karma phala asakti. If I'm doing something, I should get the stuff back. And therefore, karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Right? Especially beyond the naimittik karma, when you are doing to benefit others, or benefit meaning you are not doing a favor. This is the runa, the debt that you are paying back, right? Rushi runa, then pitru runa, samaja runa, and so on. So therefore also don't expect karma phala, and also you will not feel it. So karma phala asakti is there. Even going beyond, akarma phala asakti is also there. For akarma phala means not akarma phala, but akarma asakti, meaning if somebody is not going to get a outcome of the fruit, outcome of the work, then the person says, therefore I will not do it. Now that is a tamasic. So even that one also has to give up. And therefore, when when Arjuna asked Krishna, the question is very important. He says, how does Sthita-Prajna behaves? What does Sthita-Prajna does? Meaning Sthita-Prajna is not a akarma dasha. Sthita-Prajna is very much a karma dasha, but karma dasha in a state of a jivana mukti, in a state of brahmi sthiti. Sorry, back to you.
Yeah. So how much time do you have? I had a couple of small questions.
Yeah, to about 24 minutes or so. So we'll aim for 30 minutes and we can stop.
Yeah, okay. So there is one verse, ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sayyami Yasya jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato muneha. So what does it, I mean, when everybody is sleeping, he's awake, and when he's awake, everybody's sleeping. How exactly do we interpret that? That is one question.
Yeah.
Second, yeah, I think we'll go with this question. We will end with this answer,
Okay. So for example, the first thing, this is verse number, I just checked, it's 69, right? I think it's 69. Yeah. Yeah. So this one is to be taken metaphorically. In fact, if you see, Hare Krishna movements, Bhagavad Gita as it is, by Srila Prabhupada, there is a colored painting in it, and it's a nicely painted. It's humorous, of course. If you take it literally, then of course there is a problem on this verse. So really, the picture, I forgot now exact picture, but it's shown like as if like everyone is in the movie theater, okay? And the movie has been shown, and because it's a Hare Krishna Bhagavad Gita, like one individual sitting there, shown like a typical Hare Krishna form, like, the tonsured head and a shikha and a dhoti and all that. And that person in the movie theater, he's sleeping. Okay, it's a very humorously drawn picture, and everyone else is watching movie, but he's sleeping because he's bored with the movie, so to say. And now think of this: when others are awake, the Sthita-Prajna is sleeping. When others are sleeping, Sthita-Prajna is awake. Of course, this is not to be taken literally. That would mean typically the Sthita-Prajna is awake through the night and Sthita-Prajna is sleeping through the day. That would be very bad. Okay, very bad for the health and everything. No, this is to be taken metaphorically. But what it is shown is that how life of a Sthita-Prajna is different than the masses. And in what way this is to be understood is like, otherwise just looking at action of a Sthita-Prajna, he or she, you will not see any difference. Just the action, the external action, there will be no difference. This person will be eating, this person will be walking, this person might be working someplace, this person will be having a social gathering, this person will also go to the temple, this person will also go for shopping. I mean, that groceries, cooking, cleaning, that everything will be same. But that person's jivana drushti, what's going on in the background, with what context this person is doing, will be very different. For example, a person who, let's say now, Niyar is running marathon, right? So he's also still eating like the way we eat. But what he eats, or what he, certain aspects, certain ingredients he does not eat, that has changed. Or the way he is eating, the way he's become, the way he remains conscious of what he's eating, the nutrients, the ingredients, that is different. To the person who doesn't have that finesse will say, oh yeah, what's a different thing, but to that person, the jivana drushti, like, the vision is different. And that's why the person with, that's why Arjuna is asking, how is he going to walk and what does he do? So he still does things. He still walks.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I wanted you to come out with this itself, that it doesn't mean that the person is just sitting somewhere with sannyas. No, it is not. He's a completely karma yogi person, but with a mindset which is beyond himself, beyond the sharir, beyond his own selfish needs, but for a larger good is what I wanted to say. So I think we can end here, Nilesh. Do you have anything else to add?
Very good. I mean, I'll just like final line I would add and give it back to you is that, yes, that's exactly what we will say in chapter 5, which is a sannyasa yoga, karma sannyasa yoga. And again, we will see that in chapter 18, kind of second chapter itself is the whole summary, everything. Then fifth chapter is another summary, you can say. That's why karma sannyasa yoga. So not surprising that it comes again, sannyasa yoga. And then in the 18th chapter, which is a summary chapter, again, it begins with the sannyasa and tyaga. And again, Arjun raises certain issues, whether, what's the difference between that and the types of tyaga and so on. And again, it is said, even the sannyasi is working. Okay, but his or her jivan drushti is different. Why he's working? He is doing it, his actions may appear similar, but his purpose is different. He's doing those actions for the purification of his sharir, but purification of his mind and buddhi, antahkarana shuddhi. Back to you, you can conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Nilesh. And in the next session, we'll go through the third chapter, and let's conclude here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Jagadamba Jagadamba Jagadamba.